You're listening to the Author Inside You podcast, a weekly podcast designed to motivate you to finish writing a book, choose a publisher, and have your work build an audience. Keep listening if you're looking to get propelled into the next chapter of your life. And now, it's the Author Inside You podcast with your host, Leah and Matt Rafferty.
Hello, and welcome to the Author Inside You podcast. I'm Matt Rafferty.
And I'm Leah Rafferty.
Joining us today is Pagan Malcolm. Pagan is the best-selling author of the Starlight Chronicle series and the Ryan Rupert series. When she's not writing, she's copywriting and coaching authors through her business, Paperback Kingdom. Welcome, Pagan. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, Pagan, we're so excited to have you as a guest, and you're coming all the way from Australia. So thank you for taking the time to speak with us.
Absolutely.
So we hear you have a very exciting story to tell us about your first query letter.
Yeah, so my first query letter was back in 2016. I was still in high school when I sent it. It was my final year of high school, and while everyone else was getting ready for university, I was doing the complete opposite because I knew I wanted to be a writer.
Wow.
Yeah, I sent it off. And I was expecting to get rejected, as you do. I was really prepared to get heaps and heaps of rejections, but to my surprise, they accepted me the very first try.
Great. Jeez.
Yeah.
You must have been like, this is crazy.
Yeah, it was really shocking. But of course, that didn't actually work out because a couple of months later, the company had to shut down due to bankruptcy. So I kind of felt like at that stage, I'd gone in reverse of what is usual in the author world, where usually you get rejected first, and then I felt like I got accepted, and then from that point forward, it was very hard to get back in.
Well, what happened then after the publishing company went out of business? What happened to you then?
So what they did was they reversed all of my rights. I got a book cover, I had a half-finished book, and they basically said, you can go do whatever you want with this. You can self-publish it, you can traditionally publish it. So I tried to get it traditionally published again for quite a few years, and I got rejected by every publisher in Australia.
Going back a little bit, I think it's amazing. So you wrote the book while you were in high school?
Yes, I wrote a couple of books in high school, but this was the first one that I thought was of publishing standard at the time. So I went ahead and ran with it.
So then you ended up eventually self-publishing the book?
I didn't. I decided that I really wanted to traditionally publish this book. So I put it aside for a couple of years and I went ahead and self-published my other book, that was Stuck on Vacation with Ryan Rupert, and sort of experimented with that for about a year or two, just figuring out how to do it all by myself.
What did you learn from that experience?
It was interesting because I learned a lot about, just the basics of how to build an author platform and things like that. But I also realized that I knew nothing about publishing or being an author. And I realized that it wasn't easy to get the information at all. And that's kind of what inspired me to start my business, Paperback Kingdom, and help other authors from that experience.
So how did you decide? I mean, you thought you should start this business, but wasn't it overwhelming to actually think that I'm going to do this?
Oh, for sure. I actually sat on it for about 2 years before I actually decided to do it. I kind of came up with business plans and then thought, no, I can't do it. I'm too young. I don't have the experience, all that kind of stuff. And then eventually I was sitting in an office job and I was doing reporting work, and I just sort of was sitting there and thinking, I know how to market my book. I've been growing, I've been learning. I will continue to grow and learn because I'm definitely not going to stop at any time. So why don't I just do it? Because I have what I need to get started.
Congratulations. Good for you for being so strong to do this. Wonderful.
Thank you.
What was it that you learned in this job that you thought that you could share with other authors to help make them successful?
I first thought to myself, the biggest thing that people or that authors sort of struggle with is marketing the book, because if you're a writer, you sort of figure out how to write along the way. And if you want to publish, you have the motivation to go and look up that kind of stuff. But it's the marketing that really trips people out. So that was my starting point, was to offer something that helped authors with marketing. But as I got more experienced in it, I realized that the publishing and the writing was just as important. And I decided to offer all three things in my coaching and my copywriting.
Yeah, that is great, because I read about that all the time on Facebook. Authors and author groups that I'm in on Facebook, and they just have don't even know where to begin with marketing their books many times.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was the same. When I started, I had a failed launch the first time because I didn't build an audience first. I didn't do any like mailing list stuff. I didn't even know how to put myself out there and build an online presence. I just sort of put the book out there and was like, the readers will come to me, and they didn't. Surprise. So when I realized there's a lot more work that goes into this, I knew I had to share it with other authors and, get that information out to them as fast as possible, because I didn't want them to make the same mistakes that I had.
Right. So what kind of advice do you have for people who have finished a book and they're beginning the marketing of it?
Start as early as you can. I actually recommend starting the marketing process 9 months in advance if you can. 6 months works as well, but 9 months is better. Because it will take time to cultivate an audience, to get the hang of posting online and figuring out what feels good to you, because there's different ways to market, and building your mailing list, doing all these things is going to really help when you get to your launch day, because you'll have all this stuff behind you to help, really elevate your launch and continue making sales afterwards.
Excellent.
Can you tell us a little bit about your writing process? How did you know you wanted to write this specific book?
So I've been writing since I was, as long as I can remember, like I would say 5, but probably younger.
Wow.
I actually used to tell stories through pictures before I learned how to actually write. I would draw pictures and I would tell people the story.
Oh.
It wasn't actually a question of, will I be an author? It was a question of, when will I be an author?
Oh, okay.
So when it came to my writing process, it was something that developed over time. I just learned how to tell stories. From there, I learned how to make my stories better, by enhancing description and character development, just one thing at a time. I'd sort of follow my instincts, I guess, and figure out what's missing in the story, what makes this different to a best-selling novel, how do they read differently?
Well, Pagan, when you're writing a series, do you have like the entire series in your head before you begin writing? Or are you just a couple of chapters ahead, or are you at the end of each book? How does that work?
So I think out the gist of the series. I may not know what's going to happen in every single book, but I know where the direction is going. So for the series that I'm currently writing, which is Lanterns in the Sky, I've done the first 2 books and I have the gist of where the 3rd and 4th book are going to go, but I'm very much doing it as I go. So I just know where I need to get to at the end.
So when it comes to writing a series, how fast can you write a series or one individual book as part of a series?
It really depends. For example, for Ryan Rupert, that one took me a week. It took me a week to write it.
Wow.
Yes. And that's because it's a contemporary. It's a bit easier to write. The actual revisions and editing, however, took a couple of months. So the writing itself can be very fast. With my fantasy series, however, that one, each book takes about a year because the plot is much more complex and I have to really think it out. I have to go back through, make sure there's no plot holes, make sure everything's lining up. And because it's a longer series, I really have to fact check everything, especially if I'm a couple of books ahead and I have to go back to the first book, just make sure I haven't created a plot hole. I haven't forgotten a character, which has actually happened a couple of times. Things like that.
And do you have people helping you with this process?
Yes. So Lanterns in the Sky, my fantasy series, that is actually signed with a publisher. So they have editors that help me. And yeah, they're all really great there.
What is that like, working by yourself first and now collaborating with others? I
really like being individual and, doing things on my own. But having that support system is also really beneficial because it feels like I have a second pair of eyes on everything. It feels like if I can't do something on my own, I have a bit of backup that can help me get through doors that I may not be able to open yet and, get extra opportunities. So there's definitely pros and cons to each process. But yeah, going from working on my own first, it was definitely a big shift to learn how to let go of control.
You already have all these books published, and now you have a podcast and a business. So now let's talk about the podcast.
So the Paperback Podcast, that's what it's called. It's about basically just book tips, like anything that can help authors with marketing, sometimes with their writing, sometimes with their publishing, but mostly with their marketing. I really wanted to give people quick, fast, easy and implementable tips that they can take with them. They can listen to it on their drive home if they're doing cleaning. As much as I love podcasts myself, I don't have the time to listen to really long episodes all the time. So I wanted to do the opposite of that and create something that they can consume in 10 minutes or less.
Well,
Yeah.
I appreciate that, because today when I was out running errands, I was listening to your episode about people thinking that they need to live in a big city in order to be a successful author, and how you had tips about how you can do it in your small town. And it was just, you got right to the point, and it was very interesting.
Thank you. Yes, that's definitely the point of what I was trying to do.
So do you want to share some of those tips from that episode?
Sure. So one thing that was really helpful for me was just going to my local library, because something that I thought back when I thought, oh, there's no opportunities for me here, is that there was no one to ask. There was no one who could offer them. But going to my library proved different, because they would tell me when authors were coming in to do workshops. And when I told them I'm interested, they'd actually call me up to let me know. So
Wow.
I didn't think that people were coming to my town until I actually said, are there people coming to the town? And they said, yes, there are, because I just wasn't seeing the advertisements. So that's one thing. Don't assume things, because you never know if things are actually different.
Sure.
Another thing that really helped me was going onto Twitter, because Twitter has such a big writing community, and it is the place to network with publishers, with editors, with book bloggers. All these people are going to really help you in sort of advancing your author career and really pushing your book. So if you can go on there and sort of build a network, talk to people, get involved with chats, that's going to be really beneficial, and it's something you can do from your phone.
Excellent, because nearly everyone has access to Twitter, so that's great.
Exactly. And like, if you really need to, you can go to your library and use a computer.
Right. Thank you for sharing this, because I do think sometimes people do feel isolated, but there are people out there who are willing to help and want to help people. And so I think that's nice, just going to your local library. And like you said, you didn't hear the announcements of who was coming, but if you just ask, that's how you're going to find out questions and get them answered.
Exactly.
I encourage people at home to go to your webpage, check out your business and your books and your podcasts, and also your graphics, your logo. You are quite something.
Thank you. Yes, I would love to help anyone listening.
So it's paperbackkingdom.com?
Yes,
Correct.
paperbackkingdom.com.
Great. And then what's the best way for people to get in touch with you if they'd like to talk to you?
So the best way is probably through email, which is pagan@paperbackkingdom.com. So very easy. But if you wanted to reach out on social media, I am monitoring all of it all the time. So if you go to the Paperback Kingdom website, it's all listed down the bottom.
Do you have any advice for people who are just starting out?
I guess the best bit of advice that I have for people is to believe in yourself, because I feel like a lot of writers, they tend to self-doubt themselves, or, they try really hard to market their book or to publish their book, and they don't get the results that they want. And that really causes them to sort of, get really down on themselves, maybe even give up. But if you believe in yourself and you believe in your book, and the fact that it's meant to be out in the world, that's going to really carry through. I know that when I was sort of querying Lanterns in the Sky, after all those years after that first query letter, I didn't get signed again until a couple of years later. But the thing is that my publisher didn't even exist. My current publisher, they opened their doors the year that they signed me. So I had been querying all that time, and my dream publisher, the one I was meant to be with, wasn't even out there yet. So
Right.
It could have been so easy for me to give up, but I believed in my book.
Well, that's wonderful advice again. So thank you for saying that. Do not give up. Just keep going, because all you need is one person or a company to help you. And like you just said, that company might not be available yet, but it might be right around the corner.
That's exactly right.
Wow, you have quite a story.
Yeah. This episode of The Author Inside You is brought to you by Scribophile. It's a fantastic resource that if you're writing a book, you'll need to join. So one of the cool things about Scribophile is the blog section. I just happened to read a blog the other day by Angela Ackerman. She's a co-author of 6 best-selling books, and she wrote an article called 10 Powerful Resources to Add to Your Writing Toolbox.
So Angela shares on her blog some resources to help making writing easier. For example, Writer's Knowledge Base. It's a search engine just for writers. Or what about a resource that breaks down the story structure of hundreds of movies and books? That's under her tip, the Story Structure Database.
One of the many comments on this particular blog is a writer who says, I get lost in the sheer number of articles and resources on sites like Pinterest, and then quickly learn it takes a lot of digging to find the real gems. Having a list like this is really helpful.
So if you're looking to make writing easier, join the community of Scribophile.
That's scribophile.com.
Well, Pagan, can you tell us how you're promoting both of your series?
Of course, I do a lot of the work for both of them, especially more for Ryan Rupert. My publisher does lend a hand, but I have systems in place that I teach to my clients on how to really automate my workflow when it comes to marketing, because as you can imagine, as someone who does so much, I need to have these systems in place to make sure things go smoothly and that I can actually do everything. So for my books, I tend to have, email lists built out, and I have automations that automatically go out when books are launching. I also do a lot of social media posts, and I have a lot of that scheduled that just goes out on repeat. And then if it's something like a news update or a more current sort of promotional post, I'll put that out manually. And then, I do a lot of publicity outreach as well. I do a lot of emailing bloggers, emailing media outlets, just trying to build that reputation around my author brand, because that's the really important thing, is that when you build a good reputation where people start to get to know and like you, they begin to trust you and they begin to buy your books.
Mm-hmm. How frequently are you're posting to social media?
So I do it every day. I'm always trying to be as visible as I possibly can, because even when you're not launching something, or even if you don't have anything new to share, you should still be talking about your book so people remember who you are by the time you do get to launch something again. And the way that I do this is I share quotes from my book. I share book reviews that I've gotten. I share little image graphics if they're relevant, just things like that get people interested again.
Excellent idea. Because I was thinking as you were saying that, you might get a little bored of not having anything new to say, but that's a great idea, having a quote from your book, and then if you could add some artwork or something, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Do you have book signings at local bookstores?
Yes, I've done a couple of book signings. I've had one at a local bookstore in my area, and I've done some school visits. So I had a turnout of 40 at one school that I went to, and that was really exciting because I got to talk about my book process. And I got to share and inspire to the kids how you can write a book and, just how to follow your dreams, really.
Right. That sounds like a great motivational speech right there. You speaking to high schoolers about how you wrote your book while you were in high school.
Yeah, it's definitely relatable. Maybe it's not relatable, but it's something they can sort of visualize because it's where they're at in their life. And I can sort of really show them what it was like for me.
Well, what about teachers? I bet teachers are pretty impressed with you.
Actually, teachers have been really hard to sort of network with, only because they're so busy. I think that's one of the downsides about being a new author on the scene, is that the schools really like to prioritize people who have a bit of a bigger following or a bigger impact. And I can see why, because budgets, of course, are something to take into consideration. So what I've found when contacting teachers is try to pitch your appearance in a way that's going to really benefit the school or the students at that time. And what happened for me is that in Australia, we have a thing called QCS, and it's this big test that people take at the end of the year to get into university. And one of the assignments is a writing assignment. So I was able to say to them, your writing assignment's coming up. I'll do a class to teach them how to do a better writing assignment for their QCS.
Oh, excellent idea.
Yeah.
And so then teachers did have you in and you were able to come in and speak?
Yes, I definitely when I talk to them, they always tell me, it's just a matter of organizing the right time for people to come in. And something that really benefited me was that the head of English department really wanted me to come in. So they talked to the principal to get me to come in. So if you find a teacher who's really passionate about having you to come and speak, that's definitely the best thing that you can do.
Right. Excellent idea.
Well, Pagan, it's been wonderful speaking with you. Congratulations on everything that you have accomplished, and we wish you the best.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
That was great having Pagan as a guest. And if you enjoy our podcast, you should check out Pagan's podcast. It's called The Paperback Podcast.
Pagan is very enthusiastic and had many great ideas. Check out Paperback Kingdom for promotional help.
And until next time,
right on.
Thank you for listening to the Author Inside You podcast with your host, Leah and Matt Rafferty.